Um, Good morning from Washington for another episode of Talking with Poets. Delighted to welcome Abhay K here today, my dear friend from right now in Madagascar, Indian ambassador to Madagascar. And we'll talk about one of his books, recent book, The Alphabets of Latin America, but of course we'll talk about poetry as we talk about the book. Welcome, Abhay. Tell us.
Thank you. I'm delighted, equally delighted, Indran, to join you
Good.
from Madagascar.
What time is it? Well, it's afternoon there now, I guess. I'm here, it's 9 in the morning.
Yeah, it's close to 4:15, I think.
Okay. Now, look, you know what? You and I served together in Latin America, in the American continent, and I was in Lima, and then later in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. I've been in Argentina. So I've been in some of the, and in Chile, and of course I've traveled also in the continent. So very familiar and yet unfamiliar with some of the landscapes and the people you bring. So tell us about the concept of this book and why the Alphabets of Latin America, what your sort of larger purpose is by writing this book and putting this particular collection of poems together.
Well, as you said, both of us are actually poet diplomats, and Latin America has a fairly large share of poet diplomats. And I was inspired by Octavio Paz, who was Mexico's ambassador to India in 70s. And he wrote poems about Delhi. He wrote a book about India called In Light of India. And that's one of my favorite books. And I wanted to pay my homage to the Latin American poet diplomats, including Paz. And I chose to serve in Latin America, to experience Latin America firsthand, to travel across the continent. I was based in Brazil for 3 years between 2016 and 2019. And I got the opportunity to travel across the continent and to write my impressions of Latin America. So this book is, in a way, a tribute to the great poet diplomats of Latin America. And for me, they are the basic alphabets of Latin America. So the book actually revolves around Octavio Paz and Neruda and Gabriela Mistral. And then slowly I learned a lot more about the landscape, about the geography, about the people, about various traditions like Carnival, which is coming together of humanity from different continents. And so I think overall I could, as a diplomat, as a poet traveling across this continent, I tried to pay tribute by recording my own impressions as once Octavio Paz did.
Very good. Yeah, and you do. It's a very generous book, and it's also a book based in reading, because you read Latin America as well. I mean, you read these writers, you read the history books, and you turn that reading into your poems, or that reading informs what you see when you. I remember when I was invited to a poetry festival in Santiago, and I arranged for you to be invited to that same festival. But when you came to Santiago, you didn't just stay in Santiago, you went out traveling.
Right.
You went to Atacama. Yes. And I was impressed by that urgency, that need you felt to see with your own eyes and to experience these landscapes that previously inspired poetry by Neruda and others. Would you like to start by reading some of the poems from Alphabets? Perhaps the poem on Atacama or some other to begin?
Yes, it's one of my favorite poems from the book. And I don't know why I like it, but it has something to do with Atacama's unique geography. Atacama, I am here amidst this immensity of the cold desert, shadows leaping out, windmills inviting, new Don Quixotes, hills rolling out and curved, supple breasts of the desert, sun shining ever bright in silence, not a single animal or bird, nothing like earth. In the vastness of the desert, the road merely a line, snow-capped Andes, sibylline as ever. At dawn, the moon hanging from the sky like a sickle, stars still bright on the way to Lagunas Altiplanicas. Little hills along the Andes, like camelids' humpbacks. Sunrise lights them up in soft pink. An inverted pyramid of light, air, sky, clouds. In the Laguna Minique, on its bleached shores of salt, couched birds nest.
Beautiful, beautiful. You really capture the solitude of that space, you know, and you bring it to the reader who may never get to see Atacama, you know. I mean, especially given that we're talking now in the second year of this pandemic, this endless pandemic, and the limitations it has imposed. How rich to be able to travel from our armchairs, reading your alphabets. Why don't you read us 2 or 3 other poems of which you can start? You started with an A poem with Atacama, perhaps just keep going down, and then we'll.
I would add a very short poem called Andes, you know,
Okay.
which is
Yes.
the green breasts of earth rise to quench the thirst of insatiable humanity. And of course, when we talk about Latin America, we talk about Amazon. And
Right.
here is a very subtle poem. The anaconda was missing, so they offered us piranha fishing in consolation and bathing with pink dolphins in the Black River. They caught the poor baby caimans at night while they were sleeping and took us across the river to meet the Indians. There were none.
That's almost savage, that last line. To meet the Indians, there were none. You know, and you read Amazon today, as we read in the newspapers, that the Amazon has become a net emitter of carbon dioxide. I mean, it's no longer capturing the carbon, it is actually releasing it out because of all the forest burning and so on. And you have forest burning in other poems too, but it's a beautiful poem. Really, I congratulate you on Amazon in particular, because of that the consolation, I think, is a key word in that. The notion of the tour guide giving you, the tourist, a consolation prize.
Right. And it's not only consolation as a tourist, but consolation as a human being, consolation as a citizen of the planet, you know, consolation in all. I mean, it's consolation everywhere. The poor baby caimans or the dolphins or, you know, piranha fishing. I think the whole poem is consolation, actually.
Yes.
And it's a consolation in a way, how we are facing the biodiversity loss and climate change. I mean, it's a consolation that way. And I think we have to learn to cope up with consolation. Here is a poem called Bahia, which is a city in Brazil. The city of all saints, where the upper town and the lower town come together in an elevator.
Yeah. Did you also publish that poem in your book on
Brasilia?
Brasilia? Yes.
No, no.
But a
Brasilia
similar
has
poem.
only poems about the
Brasilia,
capital city.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But it reminds me of one of those delicious poems as well, because in the succinct, meeting in an elevator. Very good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. And then I take you to Argentina, where I went looking for Borges. And here's a poem with a quote from George Louis Borges, Death and the Compass. I know of one Greek labyrinth, which is a single straight line. Along that line, so many philosophers have lost themselves. Looking for Borges, I came to Argentina. I found him nowhere. I searched all the libraries and cafes, all the labyrinthine streets of Buenos Aires. He was not even at La Recoleta. I found merely a mirror and a face staring at me in disbelief. It's hard to believe. Everyone told me Borges lived in Argentina.
One of the things you do in these poems is you evoke, of course, the writer or the poet that sort of inspires the poem. In this case, Borges through a central image, an image central to that poet. In this case, the mirror. The use
Right.
of Borges uses the use of the mirror throughout his short stories and in some of his poems, and how you make it your own. It's what we do. I mean, we consume. The poems live in our guts, right? The words of the dead man are modified in the guts of the living. That's that line from, I think it was Auden writing about Yeats. So the words of Borges are modified, transformed, transmogrified, changed somehow, but they are yours now in this poem, and it's an act of great daring, because after all, Borges is he's like God almost, or bigger than God in a sense in literature. I mean, he's a very celebrated voice, and a reminder that the Nobel Prize is not exactly a fair system, because he was never given the prize, but he is the greatest of the poets of that we know about, at least I know about, in America, in Latin America.
Correct.
I keep saying America. Maybe I can ask you a question about that, because we say this is a trip through Latin America, the alphabets of Latin America. But of course, Latin America is also part of America, this continent of America, which includes North America, Mexico, which is in this book,
yes,
and the United States and Canada and so on. So can you answer the question, why did you not, or did you think about including poems about North America, about the United States, about Canada, given that it's part of this continent, or about the Caribbean nations?
Well, I mean, Caribbean nations are included here. There's a poem called Lorca and I in New York.
Right.
That's how the Latin America extends to North America. And I mean, Mexico is very much part of it. And so it's also, I mean, places I have been to. So I was not able to travel to Canada. So, but I mean, here is a poem about Lorca and I in New York. And
go ahead.
Right.
Let's hear it. Yeah.
So no, I would read a poem
go ahead.
about sea. I mean, caipirinha.
Yes, we're following the alphabet road. Yes, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So I asked a bartender in Brasilia for a drink. She said nothing, just offered me a caipirinha. I drank it happily and asked, "What is it?" She said, "Brazil is body, caipirinha its soul. Drink whiskey when in Scotland, rum in the Caribbean. When in Brazil, drink caipirinha." Curious, I asked, How is this magic potion made? Her face blossomed like a sunflower, and she said, pour cachaça of your choice, squeeze a lemon, mix it with crushed sugar and ice. And love? She smiled, put a gentle kiss on my cheeks, and said, a great drink must have in it love distilled.
Saucy and suggestive, wonderful. Love distilled, yes, yes. That's
Right.
one of my favorite of your poems. Actually, I'm so glad that you read it. I remember when you wrote it, or at least I remember reading it at some point in draft, I think. Anyway, a beautiful poem, and
Right.
congratulations.
So thank
Keep
you.
going, keep
And
going. I mean,
yeah.
but I want to go back to the notion of the visitor, the tourist, the pilgrim. I mean, there are different kinds of ways you can go to a place, you know.
Right.
And I'm curious to know how, and the poet, let's say, I'm wondering to know if you could reflect on, because tourism, after all, is not necessarily a negative word. It can be a very positive word. It's the engine of how we can redevelop certain places or keep places as they are through sustainable tourism. So just let us know a little bit
here
your
is a
thoughts on
poem,
that.
I mean, as a visitor to the carnival of the great Rio Carnival. And the poem is actually named Proof Rock at the Carnival in Rio, because basically it's a rewriting of Proof Rock poem. And it begins, let's go then to Rio, to the carnival, when drums are beating like heartbeats of lovers meeting after a long interval, and samba dancers are out in the streets. Let's go and catch a flight to Rio. Flights full of revelers that take off at night. Oh, do not say no, let's go. In the samba drome, dancers come and go, showing off their torso. The colorful forms roll, the colorful floats roll on and on. The colorful marchers sing passionate songs. Mesmerized revelers bite their tongues and shout in drunken madness, swaying back and forth like sea waves under the full moon February night. There will be time for the samba dancers to move their hips back and forth. There will be time to dance in full glory under the moon. There will be time to steal hearts, moving hands and feet. Time for this, time for that, and time yet for 100 others before the long night is finally over. In the samba drome, dancers come and go, showing off their torso. And indeed, there will come a moment to ponder, should I descend the stairs and join the samba dancers? And join the samba dancers with other drunken revelers? They will say, what is sport? I will wear a khaki-colored linen coat over a white shirt. They will say, how does he dress so smart? Should I descend the stairs and join the carnival? Eternity hides in a moment. I wait for that moment's arrival. For I have known that such moments exist, have known that such a moment comes once in ages, and I have waited for it so long. And I know it is coming, it will come, with the music, light, and colors of the carnival. So should I not wait a little more? And I have seen the world, London, Paris, Amsterdam, New York, Shanghai, Durban, and many other wonders. So where should I end? My journey of years and years, so how should I end? And I have known other pleasures, known them all, pleasures that belong to grown-up men and women. But Rio Carnival is transcendental, beyond all. Is it the beating of drums or the bare samba dancers that make me scream? And then should I assume this is it? Shall I say I have seen all the samba schools and watched all the samba queens? in the samba drone, on the top of exotic floats. I should have brought a pair of the best binoculars to look at these unforgettable, splendid sights. And the night is fully awake, filled with joyous screams, people swaying, twirling in camarote, with pouring music, songs beside you and me. Would I, after copious drinks and sumptuous dinner, have the strength to leap into the crowd? But though I have reveled and feasted, reveled and flirted, though I have seen samba dancers wearing nothing but paint, riding the floats, performing gymnastic feats, I'm no saint, and there is nothing to regret. I have seen this moment of my life etching itself into eternity, and I have seen a drop of water contain an ocean, and I can say it with certainty. And has it been worth it after all? After the long wait, crowds, and a night of jostling among the common men and women in samba drone, has it been worthwhile to have stood the whole night on my feet, to have left behind my only child with someone I have hardly known, to say I am Krishna from the Dwapar age? I have come to see the Ras Leela in Rio. If one joining the carnival should say the Ras Leela is the carnival of the modern age, and has it been worth it after all? Has it been worth it after all? After the sea wind that strikes the window panes, after the walk over white sands of Copacabana and Ipanema and so much more. And it is possible to say, this is it, what I meant. It has been worth it after all. To walk over the white sand, to touch sea waves with one's feet. This is it, this is all. No, I'm not Ram or Buddha, nor was meant to be. I'm a flirtatious lord, one that will see a samba queen dance in her full spree, prod her to do even better, get electric, regal, stately, full of thunderous energy, at times slow and with a pause, but without a dull moment at all. I grow fonder and fonder of the samba dance. I shall remain forever here in Rio, given a chance. Shall I grow my hair and become a carioca cutie? Shall I go straight to the beach or return to duty? I've heard Copacabana is full of beauties. I do not think they will look at me. I have seen them lying on the sand, wearing nothing but a book in their hand, lying on the beach between sea and land. We have reveled long in Rio, seen samba girls in all shades of the rainbow. Shall we go then? Shall we return home?
Thank you so much for that, and
you.
bringing Eliot and the whole of the 20th century sort of back and connecting it to some. You know, we only have actually about a few minutes left on this particular connection. I'm just getting a message. So why don't we have just take the remaining time
right.
to just, if you could just give me a sort of some thoughts about where you think the continent, or if you want to focus just on Latin America, as the book is Alpha, is going in terms of its poetry. In the observations, you met many poets in your time there. You write, about many poets in this book. Where it's going, and also where it's going ecologically, politically, and whatever you feel. If there's some observations you've had from your diplomatic work, your poetic work in this region.
So, I mean, I would say that Latin America is a vibrant continent, and I think its poets are writing great poetry. I've met a number of poets during my travels, and also have engaged some of them through poetry, through translations, and a book of Indian poems. 100 great Indian poems have been translated into Spanish, including yourself and a number of other Latin American poets, which was published by the University of
Autónoma de Nuevo León.
Yeah. Autonomous University of in Monterrey.
Monterrey, that's right.
Yeah. So it's been a really a memorable journey for me to connect with the poets, to read their works, and to meet a diversity of Latin American poets. I've been to the festivals, the great Latin American poetry festivals in Nicaragua and in Medellin, and also thanks to you in Santiago, and so on. So it's been really a very important sojourn for me, both as a poet and as a person.
Thank you. And in the time that remains, would you like to read maybe a couple more poems from the book? Feel free to choose. I know we haven't touched on Neruda yet, or Cesar Vallejo.
Yeah, here's a letter to Eduardo Galeano, which says a bit about. So a letter to Eduardo Galeano. Dear Eduardo, the open veins of Latin America have been cut open wider since your departure. New veins are being cut open every day. The number of workers in the vein opening industry has multiplied. Unemployment rate has significantly dropped. Inflation has also come down. Isn't it development? What else would you call development? There are new vampires on the horizon with globalization. Their hunger for blood and wealth has exponentially grown. Amazon has many veins. Amazon is burning. It will open many veins instantaneously. Hope you are well and not turning in your grave. Please do not. There's hardly anyone left who can fix damaged graves these days. Everyone is employed in the vein opening industry. Therefore, please rest in peace. Yours sincerely, the poet.
What a smashingly difficult line in the vein opening industry, and everybody's employed in the vein opening. Yeah, it's an interesting because it antidote to the more positive, uplifting remarks you made just before the poem. I think the poem also speaks to a reality, along with your positive observations about optimistic observations about what we can do. We are, after all, living, as some say, in the sixth annihilation or something, of the planet.
Right? Yeah, it's about I think the biodiversity loss and
right.
I mean the loss of how to balance the development and balance the ecological restoration. I think this is the key question we have to answer in 21st century.
I hope you will keep writing about Latin America, about America. I mean, you are now in Madagascar, and I know you've just published a book, The Magic of Madagascar, which I'm looking forward to reading soon. But I'm wondering about the diplomat. When you leave your stamp, you leave your footprint there. It's there, or maybe you planted various trees, saplings, and they're now growing. So you're part of us, and yet you're not part of us, because you're the traveler, constantly moving from assignment to assignment and representing your country. And so I'm sensitive to that from my own experiences as a diplomat working on different continents, all of them. So tell us about that. Do you create many homes? Do you miss the homes you've had? Tell us a little bit about how you keep your center, having to say goodbye.
Well, so for me, home is the whole planet. I have written an Earth Anthem, which has a line: "We are humans. Earth is our home," and it's I find the greater family of greater Earth family everywhere. and I feel at home. So it's not like I'm really, wherever I am, that's a home for me. I mean, I'm not sort of rushing towards anywhere else. I mean, I try to focus and learn actually, and make friends, and do something about the place I am at best at the moment. And mm, and that's, I think that's how I see. I mean, I